As I start getting ready for Thanksgiving, I am constantly on the lookout for recipe inspiration. And where better to look than south of the border? Listen, Americans love Thanksgiving, but they do a couple things a little bit differently. For one, they celebrate it really close to Christmas, which to me just seems really stressful. Like 2 big dinners, basically in a month. Ugh, wild. And for another thing, they love something called sweet potato casserole. Now, typically, it's a super sweet potato mixture, and then for some reason, you put marshmallows on it and then bake it in the oven. Honestly, I'm not gonna knock it because I haven't tried it, but personally, I don't really want to try it. So I'm gonna do my own little version of a sweet potato casserole. So I'm doing a bourbon spiked sweet potato casserole. I mean, that sounds pretty good to me. I'm very excited about this one. Okay, so to get started on this dish, since I want to play kind of that balance between savory and sweet, I'm gonna make some brown butter. Brown butter is my favorite way to make what I call free flavor. So right over here, I have got a pot over about medium heat. And here I've got a ½ cup of unsalted butter. Typically, if I'm talking butter, I don't care if you use salted or unsalted, except for when it comes to brown butter. Now, when you're making brown butter, it kind of concentrates that butter down. So if it had salt in it, it would get even saltier and be like too salty. And if I'm saying that, you know it's too salty. So I'm gonna add that butter on into my pot. And when you're making brown butter, you have to use a couple of your senses. So you wanna obviously use your eyes. You're looking for the color brown, but you also wanna use your nose. It's gonna start to smell nutty and beautiful. Now, the additional sense that I'm gonna ask you to use as well is your ears. This sounds a little strange, but butter, once it melts, starts to get a little foamy and poppy and fizzy. Like it gets loud, it gets a little kind of aggressive sounding. Once it starts to calm down and almost sound like a bubble bath, you know how like when the bubbles start busting up in a bubble bath and it's just like a fizz? That means your butter's browned. That means most of that water content has cooked out and any of those milk solids that are in that butter have started to caramelize and turn golden brown, giving you the most beautiful flavor you've ever had. And it's essentially free because you bought the butter, so why not brown it? Once it looks like this, you can see all that golden, beautiful color. There's little milk solids in here that are toasted. So once it looks like this, get it off the heat, because brown butter goes from brown butter to burnt butter very quickly. So take it off the heat, transfer it into a heat-proof container, and you have got the most delicious brown butter. If you wanted to use this in a recipe for like cookies or something, you'd need to cool it to room temperature until it's kind of solid again to whip it into those cookies. But we're not making cookies today, we're making sweet potato casserole. So let's get talking about those sweet potatoes. So right here, I have got a sweet potato that I've cooked off. I've cooked off 5 of them. You want 5 medium-ish sweet potatoes. And I cooked them off in a 400-degree oven for about an hour, just until fork tender. So what I wanna do is I'm gonna just split that baby open. As you can tell, I've done more than that and already split those open, but I just wanted to show you what to do here. And you wanna get all that flesh out. Now, sweet potatoes are a lot softer. They're a lot more moist than a regular potato. So they cook a lot like kind of jammier. So just scoop that right on out. The good thing about sweet potatoes is they're a lot easier to mash as well. Basically, you just wanna get rid of that skin and just get all that potato flesh into a bowl. Just scoop it on in, almost like you're making probably the world's worst potato skins, because these do not hold up the way a normal potato does. So just scoop all that beautiful, sweet flesh out and just pop it into a larger bowl. And now we're gonna start kind of mixing this together into that filling for that sweet potato casserole. So right here, I'm just gonna kind of give it a bit of a mashup with my spoon. See how easily that happens? Sweet potato, it's almost has the same consistency of a squash. It's a lot wetter, so it just busts up really easily. And at the end of there, I'm gonna add in about half of that butter that I browned earlier. So I'm gonna give it a bit of a stir, because those milk solids like to kind of settle on the bottom, and add in about half. Now, we started with ½ cup of butter. We'll have a little less than ½ cup here, so go in with a little scant ¼ cup of butter. We're gonna save the rest for later for the topping, but that's already gonna bring a little note of savoriness into this sweet potato filling. So now we're gonna counteract that little bit of savoriness we did with a lot of sweet, because we're sticking true to a classic sweet potato casserole here. So the first thing I'm gonna add in is 4 tablespoons of brown sugar. Now, I've written this recipe saying 4 tablespoons. For any measurement heads out there, you know that's a ¼ cup, but to me, a ¼ cup sounds scarier than 4 tablespoons. So we're calling it 4 tablespoons, but clearly, eagle-eyed fans, that's ¼ cup. All right, add that on in. And then for a little bit of a Canadian twist, I'm going in with some maple syrup. I mean, I can't really resist. So we need about 2 to 3 tablespoons of that maple syrup. Just do it to your flavor kind of taste. So that goes in. Now I'm gonna go in with a little bit of milk. That milk is gonna make this ultra creamy and delicious. So we need about a 1/4 cup of milk goes in. Then I'm popping in 2 eggs. Those eggs are gonna kind of bind this all together. If I wasn't to add these eggs, things would get a little bit kind of soupy. And we don't want it to be a soup. We want this to be a nice kind of spoonable casserole. So I'm gonna start giving this a little bit of a mix up just to get everything combined. Right now it kind of almost feels like a bit of almost like a batter, but it does cook up really beautifully, and those eggs help it to almost puff up a little bit. But as I promised you earlier, we're adding in bourbon. So it's time to add that bourbon in. So the bourbon is, we got some rowdy crowd today, I'm into it. All right, bourbon is totally optional here, but if you do wanna add it, I go in with about a shot, that's also an ounce, or also known as 2 tablespoons, or 30 milliliters. I could go on. I love measurements, guys. So I'm gonna free pour it. Let's see if I'm a heavy hander. That's about a tablespoon. That's about 2 tablespoons, maybe a bit heavy, but that's okay. That alcohol will cook away, but if you are worried about that, feel free to just leave it out. It'll still be delicious without it. This just gives it that little savory caramelly note. So give that a mix. Now again, to give it a bit more of that savory flavor, I'm going in with a little pinch of some cayenne pepper. That's not gonna taste spicy. It's just gonna give a little hint of like, oh, what's going on in there, which I'm very into. Little pinch of that. Then in addition to that, I'm going classic with a little bit of cinnamon, just a tiny pinch of that as well. And then obviously it is the season in my house. So I gotta go in with some nutmeg. So I gotta get my pocket nutmeg. I really like that people know that I always have a nutmeg on me. I've unintentionally crossed borders with nutmeg. So I didn't mean to. I don't think you're allowed to. So don't at me, I'm fine. All right. I've never meant to. We'll travel with salt and apparently nutmeg. Okay, just a little bit of nutmeg goes in, and then season that up with some salt. You can add in some pepper as well. Give that a mix together, and then that looks absolutely beautiful. Now you can make this mixture up to 2 days in advance. You could store it in the fridge in this bowl if you want, or you could just transfer it right into the casserole. And I'm actually gonna go right into the casserole dish that I baked those potatoes off in, just to save on dishes, because Thanksgiving is hard. You shouldn't have to do more dishes than you don't want to, am I right? All right, right now she's not the cutest thing in the world, but she's about to get real cute because we gotta make a beautiful, beautiful topping on here. So onto there, we're gonna make a delicious, crispy, wonderful topping. So in a bowl, I'm gonna mix together, it's almost like a streusel. So I'm going in with 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour. And then again, usually there's marshmallows on here, so don't be mad about this, but we're also going with 1/2 cup of brown sugar. It makes a really nice crumbly topping. It's a nice kind of counterpart to that tangy cranberry sauce you've got on your table and everything like that. I'm going in with a cup of pecans. I love a pecan, just chopped up. Those go right on in. Then about 2 teaspoons of whatever herb your turkey's getting. So my turkey this year is gonna be a rosemary turkey, but sage would also be delicious, so I'm gonna add that in. Now, this is a little bit of my secret ingredient. It's a bit of an homage to my mom's mashed potato casserole. So as opposed to leaving this as is, which would be delicious, I'm adding in some cornflakes, because I love the crunch of a cornflake. It's so good and crispy. So you want about 2 cups of lightly crushed cornflakes. So if you've got the end of a bag hanging around, feel free to use those, or just give them a little bit of a crush. Pop those on in. And then I'm gonna go in with the rest of that beautiful brown butter that we made earlier. That's just gonna bring everything together. It's gonna be savory, it's gonna be sweet. Season that with a little bit of salt just to counteract that sugar. And you wanna mix that until it looks a little bit crumbly. Just give it a little bit of a stir, just until everything kind of comes together. I would mix this a little bit more in real life, but we're on TV, so we don't have time for that. I'm just gonna transfer this topping right on here. You can smell that beautiful rosemary. Now you wanna pop this into your oven. Now if you remember, our oven is heated to 400 degrees because of those potatoes. But as soon as this hits the heat of the oven, drop that temp to 350 and let that go for just about 25 to 30 minutes, and you end up with something that smells absolutely out of control. I don't know if it's dessert, I don't know if it's dinner, but I do know it's delicious. Like, look at that little baby. What a stunner. All right, I gotta give this a taste because I'm too excited about it. Little cornflake crunch. It's gonna be smoking hot, let's do it. Oh. Those people down south might know something, that's delicious. Hey, Hey, Mary here. What did you think? Drop your comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of the good stuff.